Every single book which have toppers suggested, but nothing worked for me.
I was like कि नहीं होगा छोड़ देते हैं, नहीं हो रहा है तो क्या फ़ायदा इनको दोबारा पढ़ने से.
I would like to thank StudyIQ. I got connected to StudyIQ.
StudyIQ ने मेरा मेंस तक मैंने साथ दिया, उसके बाद भी उन्होंने मेरा साथ नहीं छोड़ा.
And I have taken this mock at StudyIQ.
And I would recommend StudyIQ.
Yes, I will definitely recommend StudyIQ.
Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English channel. In our today's video, we are going to understand small finance bank. You may have come across these kind of banks that says AU Small Finance Bank. But you'll recall the State Bank of India, SBI, does not use the word small finance bank, neither does SDFC nor ICICI. So what in the name of God is small finance bank, or how is it different from universal bank, right? Now, AU is not the only small finance bank in India. There are other small finance banks currently in operation in India. So let us understand what is a small finance bank. But why are we discussing small finance bank? Let us understand the context. Now, a small finance bank known as Jan Small Finance Bank, it has submitted an application to the regulator of our banking sector, that is Reserve Bank of India, seeking approval for a voluntary transaction or a transition. Earlier, Jana Small Bank is a small finance bank and it wants itself to transition into a universal bank. Now you'll realize banks like SBI, banks like ICICI, banks like PNB, SDFC, etc. These are full-fledged banks known as universal banks. So obviously, small finance bank must be some kind of restrictive banking. So we'll understand everything in detail, what is a small finance bank and what is a universal bank. Earlier, small finance banks, they sought to become universal banks upon completion of 5 years of operation, and there was no need for them to fulfill any additional requirements or criteria. But now, RBI has set a definite eligibility criteria so that fulfilling those criteria, then only the small finance banks can transition into a universal bank. So we'll first understand what is a small finance bank, then we'll understand how are they different from universal bank, and then we'll understand what are the conditions has RBI laid in its guidelines that says the small finance banks need to fulfill before they can transition into universal banks. Okay. So first, let us start with different kinds of banks that are there in operation in India. As you can understand, banks primarily are divided into two types. Banks that are established from a profit motive, these are called as commercial banks, and the banks that are established for benefits of their creditors that are members of the cooperative, these are called as cooperative banks. Further, commercial banks are also divided based on their ownership, that is a public bank which is majority owned by Government of India and private banks which are owned by private individuals. Similarly, the subsidiaries of foreign banks like Citibank, Standard Chartered, etc., these are classified as foreign banks in India. Now, another kind of bank that has emerged in last decade are the differential banks. These banks, they provide only some kind of service that the universal banks are providing. For example, regional rural banks and local area banks, these are banks that have a regional basis only. They are operating only in few districts or few states of India, not in the entire country. Similarly, payment banks are the banks that are available more on digital platform, not in physical terms. And the last one is the small finance bank, which we are going to understand in detail. What you need to understand, small finance bank is a differential bank because they only have some kind of facilities available in them as against the full-fledged universal bank. So the objective actually of setting up a differential bank and particularly a small finance bank was to fulfill certain objectives. First was to ensure financial inclusion in the country. With establishment of small finance bank, RBI and the government, it wanted to extend banking services to rural areas and semi-urban areas where majorly the commercial banks don't have such a large operation. Similarly, these small finance banks will also help expanding what is known as microfinance. Now, microfinance are the financing that provides loans for smaller amounts. Suppose if you're a poor person, you'll be requiring loans for say 10,000, 20,000 rupees, right? If you're a poor person, you're not going to go to a bank and demand for a 1 crore rupee loan. So these smaller amount of loans for few thousands of rupees, these are called as microfinancing, and this provide affordable credit and banking services especially to people hailing from lower income groups, right? Also, this small finance bank and differential bank, these are intended to enhance credit accessibility particularly to people belonging to lower income groups like small enterprise owners, marginal farmers, as well as micro entrepreneurs, right? So these are the key objectives, keeping in mind which the RBI gave permission to establish small finance bank. Now let us understand what are the regulatory framework under which these small finance banks are provided legal recognition, right? Now earlier government set up a committee under the chairmanship of then Deputy Governor of RBI known as Nachiket More, and this Nachiket More committee gave recommendation highlighting that you need to establish what are known as differential banks. These banks will provide only certain kind of banking services. Therefore, small finance banks get its origin from the recommendations of Nachiket More committee. And these small finance banks, these are obviously licensed and regulated by the regulator of our banking sector, that is RBI, and it provides them the license under the act known as Banking Regulation Act 1949. Now in Banking Regulation Act, there is a schedule where the names of the banks which have been given license are mentioned. So these small finance banks are also the examples of scheduled commercial banks, okay? And these companies are registered under Companies Act 2013. So small finance banks are companies registered under Companies Act 2013, and they are giving licenses for differential banking under the Banking Regulation Act, where these banks are also mentioned in the schedule like other commercial banks. So these are also called as scheduled commercial banks, okay? So this was the regulatory framework of how small finance banks are provided the recognition. Now let us understand on what financial grounds can you open a small finance bank, right? So to open small finance banks, or to become eligible to become a small finance bank, you need to at least have a minimum paid up capital of 100 crore rupees. At the time when small finance bank started its operation, it was 100 crores. Now RBI has expanded it to 200 crores, okay? Similarly, small finance banks, whenever they give loans, 75% or 3/4 amount of their total loans must go to priority sector. What is a priority sector? Sectors that are important for the growth of economy but have been neglected by larger banks. These sectors like agriculture, like micro, small and medium enterprises, like renewable energy, these has been categorized by RBI as priority sectors. Whereas universal banks, they have to extend 40% of their total loans to priority sector under priority sector lending requirement. Small finance banks have to extend more loans, that is, they have to extend 75% of their total loans to priority sector lending. Understand the difference with universal bank. Now similarly, whatever loans that small finance banks extend, at least 50% of their total loan portfolio must consist of loans which is equal to or lesser than loans amounting to 25 lakh rupees. Understand? So this is another restriction imposed on small finance bank, that they can give loan, but 50% of their total loans must include loans which are equal to or less than 25 lakh rupees. Because they can't extend loans to bigger corporate sector for larger amount, because obviously these are differential banks. Similarly, whatever branches these small finance banks open, at least 25% of these branches must be established in unbanked rural areas, those areas that have population of less than 10,000 people and are not being covered exactly by any kind of banks. Similarly, is FDI allowed in small finance banks? The answer is yes, but this FDI is applicable only up till 74%, that is 49% under automatic FDI, whereas rest 25% can be done or invested in these small finance banks based on government approval. So yes, FDI is allowed, but this is only allowed up till 74% of investment. Now let us understand what are the activities that are permitted for small finance banks, and after that we'll understand what are activities not permitted for small finance banks. First, these small finance banks can accept deposits, both saving deposits, current deposits, as well as fixed deposits. Whereas payment banks that we have discussed sometimes, these payment banks can't take fixed deposit or they can't take recurring deposits. These payment banks can only take current account and saving bank deposits, whereas small finance banks, they can accept all these kinds of deposit as against payment banks. Similarly, they can provide small ticket loans, as I've already told you, 50% of their loans have to be less than of amount of 25 lakh rupees, and they have to be extended for microfinance and in MSME sector. Similarly, they can issue both cards like debit card and credit card, whereas payment banks, they can't extend loans, which means they can't extend credit cards. Understood? So this is the difference between payment bank and small finance bank. Small finance bank can extend both, issue a debit card as well as credit card to its customers. Similarly, they can also undertake distribution of other financial products like insurance, like mutual funds, like pension products, but only after they get approval from RBI. Understood? Now let us understand what are activities prohibited for small finance bank. First, small finance banks can't engage directly in large scale corporate lending, obviously because this is a differential bank set up for a specific purpose, not for undertaking loans to big corporate companies, because otherwise universal banks are already providing big companies the loan. Similarly, small finance banks are not permitted to set up subsidiaries for non-banking financial services. What are non-banking financial services? For example, we know there is a very popular bank in India, private sector bank, ICICI. So ICICI has its subsidiary called as ICICI Direct, which allows you to invest in stock market. Similarly, ICICI provides insurance under a company known as ICICI Lombard, right? So these are the subsidiaries of ICICI Bank. Similarly, small finance banks can't set up these subsidiaries, unlike universal banks. Also, there can be no foreign operations allowed for small finance banks, because you may have heard banks like SBI, they have banks or branches in cities like London, cities like Dubai, whereas small finance banks, they can't have these kind of foreign branches. Understood? So these are activities prohibited for small finance banks, right? Now, I've curated this table which will help you understand a bigger difference between small finance banks and universal banks. Obviously, the scope of activities for small finance banks is very restricted. They can only give out financing for certain section, whereas larger interest of the overall community in India, they are catered to by the universal banks. Whereas minimum capital requirement obviously is different. For small finance bank, you only need to bring 200 crore worth of capital requirement, whereas for universal bank, your capital requirement is larger. Credit requirement is much more stringent on small finance bank. They have to extend at least 75% of their loans to priority sector, whereas normal banks, universal banks, they only need to extend 40% of their total loans to priority sector, because the focus segment of these two banks are different. Similarly, other differences also exist in terms of branch expansion, in terms of foreign operation, which is not permitted for small finance banks and allowed for universal banks. These are regulated by RBI under differential banks, whereas regulation under RBI is done for universal norms under the universal bank, because of restriction in deposit and lending and investment activities, right? So these are in total the difference between small finance banks and universal banks. Now, before concluding our discussion, we also need to understand what are the criteria that has been led by RBI so that small finance banks can transition to universal banks. So let us understand what are the criteria that the small banks or small finance bank needs to fulfill first. First, they need to have a satisfactory track record before they can transition into universal bank, and this satisfactory track record should be for preceding 5 years before they file an application to RBI. Also, their shares of small finance bank, they need to be listed in a recognized stock market in India like NSE or BSE, right? So this is how they need to fulfill listing criteria also. Also, in terms of minimum net worth, before they file for an operation or application with the RBI to transition into universal bank, the small finance banks need to have a minimum net worth of 1,000 crore rupees. And they need to have a net profit in the last 2 financial years before they are filing an application. Similarly, in terms of NPAs, that is both gross NPA and net NPA, for small finance bank, it needs to be less than, the gross NPA needs to be less than 3%, whereas net NPA needs to be less than 1%. I hope you understand the difference between gross NPA and net NPA. Basically, gross NPA, if you deduct provisioning requirement of the bank, you get what is known as net NPA, right? So this is the difference between gross NPA and net NPA. So they have to fulfill GNPA and NPA to a levels of 3% and 1% respectively. Also, at the time of their transition, there can be no change in the promoters, that is, the existing promoters. They can't bring in new promoters to the small finance bank, nor the existing promoters can exit from their business during the time of transition from small finance bank to a universal finance bank. And the small finance bank who have a diversified loan portfolio, they will be preferred by RBI to allow transition into universal bank. So in total, these are the criteria that a small finance bank need to satisfy before they can get their universal banking license. Understood? Any doubt? If you have any doubt, you can ask me in the comment section, okay? Now, what are different kinds of a bank? I took a very cursory view today. I just explained to you different kinds of bank before getting into detail what is a small finance bank. And we cover every bank in great detail in our P2I foundation batches, and the admissions for Pratigya evening batch are ongoing right now where I teach economy. To take admissions in these kind of batches, what you need to do, you need to go to our website and opt for diamond courses, which is available at 29,999, and you'll get this rate only after applying the code ATS live. But please do make sure to take admissions before admissions will close from 15th of June onwards. To take admissions, what you need to do, how to apply the discount code, let me demonstrate to you, right? Now, what you need to do, go to our website. This is the website. You will be required to log in using your mobile number, and once you're done logging in, go to this option. It says all languages, right? And I understand most of you are watching the video might not be that comfortable with Hindi or with bilingual batches, right? So select English option here. Once you're done selecting English option, the tile on the extreme left, it says the P2I Foundation 2026 Pratigya batches. This is the batch that you need to opt for. Click on this, you'll see that the 35,999 is the course fees for diamond batches, but you will get admissions on an amount which is discounted even on this rate. To apply the code, you need to use the code that is flashing on the bottom half of your screen. It says use the code ATS live to get maximum discounts on StudyIQIAS platform, and this is applicable for all the courses that you buy, right? So to apply that code, you need to click buy now. Once you click buy now, on your extreme right, there is an option to add promo code. Click here, and on left, write ATS live. Once you're done writing ATS live, click apply. As soon as you click apply, you'll realize the discount of 7,000 rupees is now applied, and the diamond course is now available at 28,999. Platinum is at 23,999. Gold is at 13,999. Obviously, you can opt for either of these three batches, but if you ask my recommendation, I'll tell you opt for diamond batches. And why am I recommending diamond batch? Because diamond batch comes with certain kind of benefits which are not available in either platinum or gold. Obviously, when you opt for diamond batches, you'll get live classes and lecture notes, one-to-one membership. But for diamond batches, the exclusive benefits like mains residential program are applicable. For example, if you clear prelims, you'll be brought to Delhi, and every expenses of yours, study related, food related, lodging related, will be taken care of by StudyIQ. You'll be kept in an atmosphere that promotes competition, that promotes you to excel in your learning and help you clear the mains examination. Similarly, once you clear mains examination, you'll be getting an interview guidance program also free of cost. Also, if you demonstrate good learning during your earlier phases in the batch, you'll also be brought to Delhi even before prelims, which are benefits available similar to the mains residential program. Similarly, you'll also get selection box, which are a collection of books which are important from your exams perspective for all the subjects. You'll also be getting guidance from the faculties themselves, that is Margdarshan, as well as you're eligible to get scholarship, that once you clear prelims, all of your course money, yes, all of your course money will be refunded. And if you top your monthly test, you'll be eligible to get 11,000 rupees worth of a scholarship every month, right? So these are benefits available exclusively in diamond batch, and that is why I was recommending you the diamond batch, right? Select accordingly, whatever suits you the best, but my recommendation, you already know it, it is the diamond batch. Do not forget to apply the code ATS live, because only then you'll be able to save your 7,000 rupees. And if you still want to ascertain what are the different benefits available under these three respective batches, this is the slide that you need to refer to. I will upload them in the notes, no need to worry. Now, before concluding our today's discussion, this is the practice question that you need to solve. Do solve this practice question, and this is modeled very closely to a question that appeared on payment banks in the prelims examination. So, small finance banks also are the example of differential bank. So this is the question that I've curated. Do let me know the correct answer in the comment section, and if you answer it correctly, I will give your comment a thumbs up. Right, so you'll understand you've answered it correctly. And if you want to download the notes, these will be available on my Telegram channel called as ATS Live. So go on the top right hand corner of your app, search the words ATS Live, you'll find the channel. And for some reason, if you still aren't able to find the channel now, this is the QR code that you need to scan. Subscribe to the channel if you still haven't, and download the notes. So this is all from my side. Please have a very good day.
Every single book which I've toppers suggested, but nothing worked for me.
आई वाज लाइक कि नहीं होगा छोड़ देते हैं, नहीं हो रहा है तो क्या फ़ायदा इनको दोबारा पढ़ने से.
I would like to thank StudyIQ. I got connected to StudyIQ.
StudyIQ ने मेरा मेंस तक मैंने साथ दिया, उसके बाद भी उन्होंने मेरा साथ नहीं छोड़ा.
And I have taken this mock at StudyIQ.
And I would recommend StudyIQ.
Yes, I will recommend, definitely recommend StudyIQ.